Russia-Ukraine war has entered a new phase of escalation. Ukrainian air defenses are crumbling under continuous bombardment. Moscow has unlocked a new strategy of striking Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Capital Kyiv is at the center of Russian crosshairs. In the latest attack, Russia struck numerous Ukrainian military-industrial enterprises across various locations. Ukraine also launched a series of strikes against Russian military assets on the front line. Ukrainian capital, on the other hand, is battling freezing cold without electricity and heating arrangements. Over 60% of Kyiv residents were forced to live in darkness, while more than 500,000 people have migrated out of the capital during the first half of January. Things are moving rather slow with regards to peace efforts. President Trump says the deal on Ukraine is close and he will be meeting Ukrainian President Zelensky in Davos. The Ukrainian leader is expected to land in Switzerland tomorrow.
But I also inherited a mess with Ukraine and Russia, something that would have never happened. And I know Putin very well. He and I would discuss Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye, but he wasn't going to do anything. I said, Vladimir, you're not doing it. He would never have done it.
In a speech at the World Economic Forum, the President of the United States said the war should not have happened in the first place, and Ukraine needs a stronger leader, a stronger border, and fair polls.
And I'm dealing with President Putin, and he wants to make a deal, I believe. I'm dealing with President Zelensky, and I think he wants to make a deal. I'm meeting him today. He might be in the audience right now. But they got to get that war stopped.
The line of contact is also open with Moscow. The Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff for talks on Thursday. Witkoff will leave for Moscow from the World Economic Forum in Davos on Thursday night alongside Jared Kushner, who has also been tasked with negotiating the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The U.S. is seeking to negotiate an end to the nearly 4-year Ukraine war. Ukraine says it has agreed to 90% of a deal, but key issues, including the thorny question of territory, remains unresolved. Kyiv is also seeking clarity from its allies on post-war security guarantees, which it sees as key to deterring Moscow from launching a new assault. The talks come as the 4th anniversary of Moscow's offensive looms, and as Moscow has pounded Ukraine's energy facilities throughout the winter. Let's now talk to our correspondent, Susan Teherani. She's now joining us live from New York. Susan, it's good to see you. Hi. The president did attack NATO and Europe during his speech about the Ukraine war. He says that NATO and Europe are ungrateful of efforts by the United States in ending the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was going to say this fast-paced sequence of events that we're seeing, where Zelensky is going to be meeting with President Trump in the Alps, and then after that, quickly, his envoys are going to head to Russia to try to meet with Vladimir Putin, come at a time when just less than an hour ago, President Trump said that, he's doing this out of America's good faith, trying to negotiate some kind of peaceful settlement because there are oceans and oceans between the United States and Ukraine, citing it as an example that the United States goes to Ukraine, NATO's defense often, and the interests of Europe. He was skeptical that Europe would do the same. But I think it really shows that on the one hand, how fast things are moving. On the other hand, the State Department spokesman was just asked whether or not some kind of breakthrough is in store, possibly. He again diverted to the negotiating side, saying it's ultimately up to Ukraine and Russia, but the U.S. will continue to mediate. And also just symbolically, with President Trump meeting Zelensky at Davos, it signals that they want to see what's realistically achievable. Again, putting that kind of urgency on it, despite the president's earlier comments.
Mm-hmm. Susan, he also mentioned, the president of the United States also mentioned that he had spoken to President Putin, and President Putin assured him that he wants to have a deal on ending the war in Ukraine. He also said that he will be speaking to Zelensky, but he had already spoken to Zelensky, and Zelensky told him that he also wants a deal to end the war in Ukraine. So we don't know if this is just talk by the president.
Yeah, by the president and by the negotiating sides, Ukraine and Russia as well, they've always said that they want a deal, but the devil's in the detail. What does that deal entail, and will both sides agree to it? As Zelensky heads to this meeting with President Trump, he's very concerned about whether or not he's going to have to give up more territory that he can justify to the Ukrainian people. And on the other side, Russia wants to make sure that at least as part of these negotiations, it gets some kind of sanctions relief and also an assurance that Ukraine won't join NATO. With relations between NATO and the United States at an all-time low, it's hard to imagine that there's going to be any kind of breakthrough in the next few days, but the talks are ongoing.
All right, let's see what happens when President Zelensky meets President Trump in Davos. This will be the 7th meeting by both leaders of Ukraine and the United States. Susan Tehrani, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.